Ready for some stories? Hello everyone! My name is Shannon and we're really excited to see you again today. I have Fozzy Bear here, I have Doxie here, and our special guest today is KitKat the Kitten, and she will be hanging out with us for our first story today. So as you can see, Fozzy is in the tub. We just gave Doxie a bath in the last session, so he's over here all bundled up in his towel drying. And we'll find out about kitten baths for our first reading session. So KitKat, as you can see, is an orange tabby, and she's a female, which is pretty rare. Most of the time orange tabbies are males. And the one in the story we're going to read is also a female. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and give Fozzy Bear his bath. The story is called Cat Bath by Phyllis Root. This story is called Cat Bath. It's about how Tabby Cat washes herself until she is all clean. But what about Sammy? Tabby Cat washes her paw. Tabby Cat washes her ear. Tabby Cat washes her nose. Tabby Cat washes her leg. Tabby Cat washes her back. Tabby Cat washes her tail. Now Tabby Cat is all clean. So Tabby Cat washes Sammy. Aww. So yeah, cats usually don't need baths because they can clean themselves with their very special tongue, just like little KitKat here does. But Fozzy Bear and Doxie, they need a little extra help. So we'll go ahead and take off their bandanas and finish their baths. Okay. I'm going to take off my tags too so I can get in and bathe him just a little bit better. And we'll start off with the Shed Control shampoo. I'm going to do the same thing I did with Doxie. Go down his back and then get it all nice and soapy. I'm going to go ahead and take off his collar here. Splash up. Get it a nice lather all over his back. Rub my fingers down deep into his coat. Especially right around where his collar is. He needs a lot of help in that area. And that's where he tends to get a little bit of mats. He doesn't get mats nearly as bad as Doxie does because his type of coat sheds or comes off.
Good boy, good boy.
The base of his tail. Make sure to get some extra shampoo on my hands. And rub his tail. Get that tail all nice and clean. Okay. A little bit more on my hands for his legs and his underbody. And just like Doxie, I do between his toes. pretty good. And now we'll do our rinse. Okay, now because Fozzy Bear has a really light colored coat, I also use, good boy, I also use the whitening shampoo. I do it the same way. And rub it on into his fur. It smells so good. You're getting all so clean. It's just so good. Oh, nice and clean. Oh, look at this good lather here. That's a good lather. Good boy. Or on here for his legs and his feet. Alright, looking good there, Foz. Rinse him off. Okay. At this point, of course, I would normally use the detangling rinse. But since I'm currently out of it and haven't been able to go to the store, we won't do that just yet. Alright, so Fozzy's pretty well rinsed here. So we'll go ahead and read our next story. And since we're doing a beach theme, beach at home, since we can't go to the beach with all that's going on right now, we're going to read another ocean story. The True Story of Corky the Blind Seal by Georgeanne Irving. The True Story of Corky the Blind Seal by Georgeanne Irving. Harbor seals live along the coasts of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. They grow to be about 6 feet long. They weigh about 250 pounds. Some are gray and some are black, and all have spots of black or brown. Harbor seals are excellent swimmers. They find all of their food in the water, but they sleep on rocky shores and sandy beaches. Baby harbor seals are born in the early spring. They spend 6 weeks with their mothers. Then they go off on their own. This is the story about one very special harbor seal. His name is Corky. It was a stormy spring day. A baby seal was alone on a San Diego beach. His mother was nowhere in sight. The baby seal was hungry. There was no one to feed him. Surely he would die if help did not come soon. Some people came by and saw the frightened little animal. He seemed glad to have company, even if it wasn't seal company. The people called California Department of Fish and Game. Officers came out to help. The officers searched and searched, but they could not find the mother seal. The officers picked up the baby and packed him in a crate. He rode in the truck for half an hour, then reached his new home at the San Diego Zoo. From then on, the baby seal was known as Corky. As soon as he arrived, Corky saw his first veterinarian and had his first checkup. Corky was put on the scale. He weighed 24 pounds. For 1 month, Corky had to stay away from the other animals to make sure he did not have any diseases that would make the others sick. He lived in the zoo hospital in his own cage with his own little pool. He had all the fish and squid he wanted, and the hospital workers were very friendly. After a month, Corky left the hospital and met some new friends. He moved in with a sea lion named Mickey. Corky and Mickey shared a pen with a long swimming pool. Sea lions and seals are closely related, but they are not the same animal. Corky also met Benny Kirkbride, a sea lion trainer. Benny teaches sea lions how to shake hands, chase balls, and do other things. These are called behavior. Seals become very attached to the people who feed them. Benny gave Corky lots of fish, so Corky followed Benny everywhere. Each morning, Benny cut fish for the sea lions. Each morning, Corky would wait at Benny's feet. Corky hoped that a piece of fish would fall his way. One day, Corky started pawing at Benny's leg for fish. To Benny, this meant that Corky was ready for some lessons. First, Benny taught Corky how to shake hands with his flipper. Benny touched Corky's flipper with his hand, whistled, and gave Corky a piece of fish. In only a few minutes, Corky had learned that the whistle meant he had done something right, and a piece of fish was coming his way. Next, Benny put his hand under Corky's flipper, lifted the flipper, and took his hand away. Then Benny whistled and fed Corky another piece of fish. Benny and Corky practiced this over and over again for 20 minutes. The next day, Benny did something different. This time, he lifted Corky's flipper and gave a verbal cue, "Give me your flipper." Then Benny whistled and fed Corky a piece of fish. That's like what we do, huh? In only a few more days, Corky had learned the behavior perfectly. Whenever Benny held out his hand and said, "Give me your flipper," Corky shook hands. After he learned to shake with his right flipper, Corky learned to shake with his left flipper. Then Corky learned to put his two flippers together to say his prayers. He learned to roll over and applaud, too. Corky would do anything for a piece of fish. Corky grew bigger and bigger as he gobbled more fish. Within a year, he was a roly-poly 60 pounds. That's when Corky met some new trainers, Kathy Marmack, Carly Robinson, Heidi Ainsley, and Amy Wing. They wanted Corky for their new show called Animal Chit Chat. During the show, the trainers walked the animals on stage one at a time and talked about them to the audience. Some of the performers were Daphne the emu, Arusha the cheetah and his pal Anna, the golden retriever, hey, just like you, Rufus, a girl wolf with a boy's name, and Irving, an 8-foot-long indigo snake with a friendly personality. Corky performed the same routine for each show. He shook hands, rolled over, applauded, and said his prayers. Kathy also taught him new behaviors, how to fetch a tennis ball out of a pool, and how to wave hello and goodbye. And all on his own, Corky made funny noises. He quacked like a duck and gurgled and gargled like a garbage disposal. Corky's favorite behavior was the hardest one for him to do. He swam through the water as fast as he could and jumped over a hurdle. And sometimes Corky was too full of fish to make it all the way over. His belly got caught on the hurdle, and he teetered up and down like a little seal seesaw. Each trainer picked her own special name for Corky. Kathy called him Twerk because he was spirited and clever. Heidi called him Pumpkin, and Amy called him Porky Corky because he gulped down every fish in sight. To Carly, he was Super Slug because on land he wiggled and moved as slow as a slug. Harbor seals do not move well on land. They cannot walk on 4 flippers as sea lions do. Harbor seals use their strong stomach muscles to drag themselves across land. It isn't easy, but Corky manages to get around very well. One day, Kathy and Carly were cleaning pens outside near the stage area. As far as they knew, Corky was safe inside his own pen. All of a sudden, Corky appeared, but how did he get there? Kathy and Carly followed the wet seal trail and found out. Corky sneaked out of his pen by squeezing through the door that was open a crack. He scooted around a corner and down a short hall past Benny's office. A quick left turn took Corky right into the doorway of the fish cutting room. Corky slid in and made a U-turn to go back out. Then he wiggled down a long hallway and turned right into a dressing room. After another U-turn out of the dressing room, Corky wiggled down the hallway a little farther, rounded a corner, and squirmed down one more corridor until he found himself out in the bright sunlight. Sounds like quite an adventure, huh? As Corky grew older and bigger, he began performing for special zoo events, school assembly programs, zoo summer school classes, and on television shows. His first television appearance was on a morning talk show called Sun Up. Kathy and Carly woke him up bright and early that day. at an hour when most harbor seals are still asleep. A piece of fish was all it took to lure Corky into a large metal crate. With a lot of huffing and puffing, the girls loaded the crate into a van for the 15-minute ride to the studio. Kathy and Carly were afraid that Corky would get carsick, but he happily gargled, gurgled, and quacked all the way to the studio. Everyone knows to be very quiet when the on-the-air sign lights up at a television studio, but seals do not read signs. Corky banged and rattled the metal door on his crate. The director of the show did not like this, and everyone in the audience wondered what the racket was all about. Kathy found a small wading pool and filled it with water. In the pool, Corky quietly waited. Then it was Corky's turn. He shook hands with his flipper, said his prayers, applauded, and rolled over. He was so good that he was invited on other shows too. You guys have been on TV just like that, huh? The next show was far away from the zoo. Corky had to sleep over in a hotel. He shared his room with a tiger who stayed in a crate. Carly and Amy put Corky in the bathtub and went next door to their own room. The next morning, Carly and Amy tiptoed in to check on Corky and the tiger. The tiger was sound asleep in his crate, but Corky was gone. Carly and Amy searched everywhere, under the bed, in the closet, in back of the hat rack, behind the door, and under the table. No Corky. They were ready to report a missing seal to the police. Then Carly heard Corky's gurgles and giggles coming from over near the window. She opened the curtain and found Corky with his face pressed against the window, watching the traffic go by. Not all hotels like wild animals. One night when Corky and the other two zoo animals arrived at their hotel, the manager turned them away. Luckily, a very wealthy man invited the animals to stay at his mansion. Corky, of course, spent all of his time by the pool. Then one day, Corky missed some of his cues during an animal chit-chat show. Kathy tossed a tennis ball into the seal pool, pointed and said, "Corky, get the ball out of the pool." Corky was usually out of the water like a flash, with the ball clenched tightly between his teeth. But this time, Corky seemed confused. He dragged himself around on stage before he jumped into the water. He didn't pick up the ball. He couldn't even find it. Kathy asked Corky to shake hands. He lifted his flipper, but couldn't find Kathy's hand to shake it. Something bad was happening. Corky always waited patiently for his trainers to drop little pieces of fish into his mouth, but then he started to grab for the fish. He almost nipped his trainer's fingers. Corky became very snappy toward the sea lions. When he and Mickey were fed together, Corky tried to hog all of the fish for himself. Kathy and the others worried that Corky had been working too hard in the shows. Maybe he needed a vacation. They gave Corky a few weeks' rest. Dr. Jane Meyer, a zoo veterinarian, visited Corky while he rested. Dr. Meyer examined him. She put medicine in his eyes and looked closely. Corky had become blind. Corky had developed cataracts in his eyes. A cataract is the clouding of the lens. Everything looked shadowy to him. An operation would be too dangerous. Corky could die. All the trainers were very sad. But Benny knew what to do. He knew that even in the ocean, blind seals and sea lions can survive. Just as blind people can learn to live without sight by depending on the other senses, so do seals and sea lions. Corky would be all right, but his trainers had to change the way they worked with him. Before he was blind, Corky heard and saw his cues. Now he had to learn to hear and feel his cues. In a strong, powerful voice, Kathy asked Corky to give her his flipper to shake hands. She reached down and touched his flipper so he could easily find her hand and shake it. Corky didn't get little pieces of fish as a reward anymore. He was fed the whole fish. The trainers dangled the fish so it touched Corky's whiskers. Seal whiskers are very sensitive. Corky could feel that a fish was coming. He did not have to grab anymore. Corky's whiskers also helped him find the tennis ball in the water again. Corky had to already be in the water. Kathy called out his old cue loudly and clearly. "Corky, get the ball out of the pool." Then she flew the water into the pool as hard as she could so it made a big splash. Corky listened carefully for the splash and used his whiskers to feel the little waves the ball created when it hit. Most of the time, Corky found his tennis ball. Corky learned a new way to find his trainers, too. Before Corky was blind, he looked for the trainer who was calling him, flopped out of the pool, and slid right over to her for his fish reward. Now when a trainer wanted him, she yelled extra loudly, "Corky, out of the pool! Corky, come here!" She continued to call as she tapped her foot on the stage. The foot tapping was a new cue for Corky. It helped him find his way to his trainer. Soon Corky was out of the pool and sliding across the stage for his fish. In only 4 months, Corky could perform all of his old behaviors. Once again, he could shake hands, roll over, say his prayers, and jump over the hurdle in the seal pool. Corky learned how to use feeling and hearing in place of his eyesight. As a special reward, Corky received a new toy, a rubber duck that squeaks. Now Corky is happy again. He has a big pool to swim in, plenty of fish to eat, and a whole zoo full of friends to love. The end. That's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, he was able to adapt. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get ready to give these guys the rest of their bath treatment. We're going to start the drying process. Of course, Doxie has been drying over here for a while because with his longer fur, he needs a little extra time. Good boy. Come here. All right, so Doxie is busily drying himself over here. The same thing for Fozzy. Doxie, over here. Good job. Very good. Can you come up here with us? Right up here. Okay, so while these guys are drying off a little bit, we'll go ahead and read our very last story, which is, again, Time Cat from Lloyd Alexander. And now we are in Japan, 998 AD. Chapter 8, Master of Imperial Cats. Come, enter quickly. Jason blinked his eyes. Only an instant before, he and Gareth, that's his time-traveling cat, had been in a forest of Erin. Now, in the street in Japan, an old man with a wispy mustache and a narrow white beard was calling to them from a sedan chair. Enter, enter, insisted the old man, whose face was the color of a very pale lemon. He seized Jason by the wrist and pulled him in. From the outside, the sedan chair looked like a fancy box carried between two poles. Inside, Jason felt he was riding in a tiny, spicy-smelling cabin. Forgive this humble personage, said the man who introduced himself as Sun Cheng, but it surprised me to see a cat in the Imperial City. There aren't any more, are there? He asked anxiously. I don't know, Jason said. We just got here ourselves, but I haven't seen any. Sun Cheng pulled a little paper fan from his embroidered sleeve and began fanning himself rapidly. What a relief! I had promised the Emperor Ichigo something that could not be found in all of Japan, and with emperors, he added, promise nothing you can't deliver. As they jogged along, Sun Cheng explained that he was a merchant and a trader. He himself was not Japanese, but Chinese, and journeyed to Kyoto, the imperial city, once a year. The emperor is never satisfied, Sun Cheng went on. Always something new. He shook his head. This time, he said, pointing to a large red lacquered wooden box with holes in the lid, it will be truly a most honorable surprise. You could oblige this useless one if you would come along as a sample of merchandise. Jason didn't see how he or Gareth could be a sample, but he agreed to stay with the merchant. The sedan chair entered the palace grounds. Every few minutes, Sun Cheng had to thrust a rice paper scroll out the narrow window of sedan chair so the guards would let them pass. They stopped in front of the palace. Sun Cheng, clutching his red box, hustled out. Jason, with Gareth in his arms, followed the old Chinese up a wide flight of steps. A crowd of chamberlains, majordomos, and imperial servants hurried them down corridors so quickly that Jason barely had time to look around. He only glimpsed the richly embroidered draperies, the painted screens, the great lanterns. Guards stood everywhere, stiff and motionless, in shining armor, holding spears and wicked-looking swords. Approaching the door to the emperor's throne room, Sun Cheng began to tremble. "Do what I do," he said. "It will cost you your humble, worthless head if you don't." In front of the massive door, Sun Cheng threw himself to his knees and bowed his head until it touched the floor. Jason did the same. "Don't look up," Sun Cheng whispered. A gong crashed and the doors were flung open. Sun Cheng began crawling forward, his head low. From the corner of one eye, Jason saw more ranks of guards. He inched ahead. The throne room seemed a mile long. "These are two unworthy and totally useless specks of dust," one of the chamberlains cried. "They seek a precious moment of the imperial majesty's celestial and incredibly valuable time." Another gong crashed and Jason's ears began to sing. Still on his knees, wringing his hands, Sun Cheng at last raised his head. Jason too straightened up. They were almost at the foot of the throne where sat the Emperor Ichigo. He wore so many kimonos, sashes, and layer after layer of stiff, gold-threaded skirts that he looked like a doll. The Emperor Ichigo was a boy, no older than Jason. Sun Cheng fumbled with his lacquered box, pulled off the lid, and turned the box on its side. Out rolled 5 brown and black striped kittens. Mewing, blinking, the kittens seemed about to run off in all directions. But then, catching sight of Gareth, they clustered around him. The black cat gave each of them a few reassuring licks. Ichigo clapped his hands with delight and jumped off the throne. In another moment, he was on the floor beside Jason and Gareth, peering at the kittens with amazement and fascination. "I want them," he exclaimed. "What are they?" "These are what we call cats, Imperial Highness," Sun Cheng explained. "In our humble land, they are ancient and honorable creatures." "Why are there 2 sizes?" Ichigo asked. "The small ones are young," Sun Cheng said. "In time, they will grow." "Cats," Ichigo whispered with a smile. "I think that's what I've always wanted." Now we have a special guest. KitKat has decided to join us. Jason had been so busy looking at the kittens playing around Gareth that he did not notice a man in glistening armor who stood just behind Ichigo. With his hands on his hips, he scowled down at the Emperor. "What is this nonsense?" he asked in a voice like a whip. Ichigo turned to him. "Oh, Uncle Fujiwara, please let me keep them." The man gave the kittens a scornful glance. "They don't look as if they would taste very good." "Honorable Regent," Sun Cheng cried, bowing and bumping his head against the floor. "Exalted guide and instructor of the Celestial Emperor, kittens are not to be eaten. They are far too precious." "Then, miserable worm, what good are they?" "Observe their eyes," Sun Cheng said. "You can tell the time of day as they grow from narrow to wide. They will predict the weather for you when they wash themselves a certain way. They will sing melodious songs. They will dance." "Don't forget mice," Jason whispered. "Shh," the traitor fearfully whispered back. "We don't talk about mice in the Imperial Palace." "Please, Uncle, please," Ichigo begged. The boy bowed his own head before the regent. "I never ask you for very much." "Who will take charge of these animals?" asked the regent. "Traitor, if you provide a keeper for them, perhaps I shall let them remain with the Emperor." Sun Cheng began to protest that he had urgent business in China. Otherwise, he would be delighted. The regent shrugged. "Then take your cats back." "Oh no, she doesn't like that idea." Ichigo, hearing this, looked so unhappy that Jason quickly spoke up. "My cat and I will stay with the kittens." Ichigo brightened instantly. "You shall be master of imperial cats," he ordered. "I grant you all the privileges of the imperial household, if Uncle Fujiwara agrees." The regent grudgingly nodded. "Now I suppose we must discuss your price." He gestured brusquely, and Sunshine crawled backward out of the throne room, the regent striding after him. The two boys sat and looked at each other for a moment. Jason was not sure how to address the divine emperor, but now that the regent was gone, Ichigo took off his imperial headdress and tossed it on the floor. He grinned at Jason. I'm glad Uncle Fujiwara let me keep them. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't said you'd stay. I always thought emperors did as they pleased, said Jason. Ichigo shook his head sadly. Not with Uncle Fujiwara around. Of course, he added, perhaps all emperors don't have an Uncle Fujiwara. He picked up one of the kittens and held it in his cupped hands. The little animal wrapped his forepaws around Ichigo's thumb and playfully nibbled his fingers. Now, Ichigo said, the first thing you must do is teach them etiquette. Otherwise, Uncle Fujiwara will be very displeased. Etiquette? Jason asked. Don't worry about that. Cats are always well behaved, most always anyway. Oh no, said Ichigo, they must learn the imperial obeisance. Everybody does it when they came into the throne room, except Uncle, of course. You mean all that bowing and creeping, Jason said? He almost laughed out loud until he saw, from the boy's solemn expression, that Ichigo was very serious about it. Oh yes, said the Emperor, that's what you have to do when you approach the celestial presence. That's me. Well, I'm afraid no cat in the world ever bowed to an emperor, said Jason. They just won't do it, Ichigo, and you're wasting your time if you try to force them. A cat does what it wants, when he wants, emperor or not, as we just saw with KitKat. Ichigo thought for a moment. Very well, Master of Imperial Cats, he said, if you say so. Then he sighed. They must be proud creatures, even prouder than an emperor, he added wistfully. What I think you should do first, Jason said, is feed them. Food? Ah, so! Of course we must feed them. Without looking up or even turning around, Ichigo clapped his hands twice. Big food! The finest delicacies in the palace. To Jason's amazement, a minute later, 14 servants marched in. They knelt, bumped their heads on the floor, and then brought forward an array of covered dishes, bowls, and saucers, and a dozen pairs of tiny chopsticks. The covers were whisked away, revealing beautifully polished fruits, raisins, sweetmeats, decorated cookies, preserves. Oh no, Jason cried, there's nothing here a cat can eat. Ichigo, tell them to bring some plain food, meat or fish or a little milk. Ichigo clapped his hands again and the servants disappeared. He looked so forlorn and disappointed that Jason, forgetting for a moment that Ichigo was celestial presence, put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Don't feel bad, Ichigo, Jason said. There's a lot to know about cats, and you have to start somewhere. Later, after everyone had been fed properly, a procession of servants led Jason, Gareth, and the kittens to their sleeping quarters in another wing of the palace. There the walls were made of sliding paper screens, open to the gentle night air. The scent of flowers filled the room. In the moonlight across the imperial grounds, Jason saw garden after garden and rows of blossoming cherry trees, and heard the rustle of a miniature waterfall. Throughout the gardens, the breeze stirred hanging bamboo rods, which gave a melodious, woodsy kind of ring. Crickets chirped in tiny wicker cages. Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead and leave off right there. It's a good break in the chapter, and we've still got quite a bit to go. This is one of the longest chapters in the book. So we will see what happens to Jason and Gareth and the kittens a little bit later in another session, and we'll go ahead and finish their drying process. So I'm fluffing the fur a little bit here, because he has multiple layers of fur. Okay, so now that he's fluffed, you can see we've got a few mats. We've got some tangles here. So then we get our brush. You always want to keep a hand on the body while you're brushing so that you're not tugging on their skin. And always brush from head towards the tail. All right, and now we blow dry again. Now we brush again. See, he's getting a lot more puffy. You want to make sure to lift up all the layers of his coat. You're not just doing the top layer, you're getting all the fur underneath also. For Doxie, an entire bath and brushing session can take 2 or 3 hours. Not quite as long for Fozzy because he doesn't have such long fur. Let's turn you around here. Pretty good. As I'm touching his fur, I'm feeling for any more mats. Just kind of bump in his fur. Getting close here. Much more puffy. So Doxie's pretty dry, and I still have to do Fozzy. But you can see his fur is very, very soft and fluffy right now. We call him our cloud puff when he's in this state. Good boy. Of course, Fozzy started off a lot more wet than Doxie, because Doxie had time snuggled in his towel. And Fozzy just kind of went straight from the bath to brushing, drying session. It's going to take a little bit longer for him to get completely dry, so we'll probably have to cut this a little bit short, but I'll show you how it turns out for our YouTube viewers. You can see getting a lot of hair off of Fozzy, a lot more than Doxie because this kind of fur sheds quite a bit. I think that Fozzy is golden retriever husky mix. A lot of fur comes off of those braids. For our last segment is, does anyone have any questions for us from our audience? So for Fozzy, Doxie, or our special guest, KitKat here. Does KitKat like dogs? Well, you can see that she's pretty happy being with them. She likes Fozzy the best, and Fozzy likes her the best too. He loves to lick her ears, and Doxie likes her well enough, but he ignores her most of the time. But she really does like dogs. All right, any other questions? Does KitKat like baths? Probably not. We haven't given her an actual bath yet. I thought that we might be able to sometime because she's been pretty happy just being in here with the water and everything nearby, and the dogs. She did get a kind of half bath when we did a little paw print painting with her. And for that, I just had Doxie go in the bath with her, and she just kind of stood there. The water was only about this deep, though, so she didn't get any more than her feet wet. But she did pretty well there. Any other questions? Favorite place to go to the beach? Well, we like dog beaches, obviously. So we went to this one in Pismo that was really fun. We highly recommend it. And it's a good place to work on your leave-it skills too, because of course some people are not as nice as we are about leaving trash and stuff on the beach. So we were able to work on our leave-it skills for anything that wasn't good that was on the beach. But that was a pretty nice one. So this will be good. All right, well, KitKat says it's time to close the show. So thank you all for coming. We'll see you next time.